Hey, hello again. So today we're going to review Scotland versus New Zealand, which was played on Sunday. The first game on Sunday. I think it was played at the same time as the Barbars, 15 versus the Barbars versus New Zealand 15. Basically, it's the same old story. The one that got away, New Zealand were there for the taking, I think, and they just managed to get their stuff together towards the end of the match and come out with the win. So Scotland are going to feel very disappointed, as they have done for the last couple of matchups against New Zealand, particularly at home. And I think, Scotland will feel like they should have done better on the day. My prediction before the game, in my preview, it was one of the games I was interested in watching last weekend, and I said that Blair Kinghorn was going to have a big impact. He didn't have any impact at all. In fact, the mercurial, the controversial figure, love him or hate him, Finn Russell was back in the side. He got a call up out of the blue. He's been on the out with the coach there, Townsend, and he was called back into the side. Actually did a pretty good job, I thought. One of the better games I've actually seen him play, whether it's for Scotland, Lions, etc. But he did a good job. His kicking out of hand was decent, and his place kicking was perfect. So that's what you expect really from your outside half. Did pretty well in kind of broken play, putting the ball through hands. One of the his best moments, I think, was I think he got a pass from Stuart Hogg and spilled the ball. You know, everyone makes mistakes, but then he ran and dived on the ball and secured it to stop New Zealand getting an advantage, a big turnover that probably would have resulted in a score. So I was very brave of him, particularly for outside half. And it was nice to see from him a little bit of passion, a little bit of pride. I think people often criticise him because he's kind of lacking in that kind of steeliness that you expect from Scottish players. But he did well. First half, 2 quick tries from New Zealand. You had King Bowden starting at 10, and he didn't have a very good game, and his record is not good as starting 10 for New Zealand. But New Zealand managed to get over 2 very quick tries, in fact. Considering they used to start so slowly at the beginning of the season, they seem to start really well now. Takeako again scored. He seems to be a try machine at hooker, so he seems to have, I don't think I've watched a game this season where he hasn't scored. Pretty amazing strike rate for a forward. And his throwing in, I just love watching him throw the ball in. It's like a laser. He's so good. Although Scotland did manage to turn over one of the lineouts and take it against the head. But New Zealand started really well, and then Scotland came back into it. Havili, no, it wasn't Havili, it was Anton Leonard-Brown. He got yellow carded for tackling the Scotland fullback over the line without the ball. It looked like Stuart Hogg was going to score a try, and I think he blatantly took him out. The bounce of the ball went against him to a certain extent, and I think he gambled. Gambled didn't pay off, and I don't think he can have many complaints about that. And that really changed the momentum in the first half, and Scotland came back into it then, and they scored a bunch of points from being 14-0 down. They went to into the second half, and New Zealand didn't score until I think I noted it down 18 minutes before the end of the game. So they went all through the rest of the first half, and the first half of the second half without scoring at all. And then they put a penalty over for 3 points. And after that, again, there was a momentum shift again due to a yellow card, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Scotland, way too many turnovers initially. Again, Superman, Artie was there, always looking to poach the ball, Savea. and he played well again. Papa Louis had man of the match on the TV, but I think Surveyor could have gotten it for his contribution in the first half alone. But yeah, scrum line-out went well for both teams, but the scrum was stop, start, and the referee never really took control of the situation, and it really slowed the game down quite a lot. What side that benefited, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But the winger, Delia, on his debut, he looked pretty sharp. He got a try early on, and then one later in the game again, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But first half went Scotland's way in the end after a slow start, and they were in the lead going into the second half. Probably better to divide the second half into like two sections. So Scotland's dominance of the first part of the second half, and then New Zealand taking control towards the end. So Scotland were able to maintain their points advantage, mainly due to the massive amount of penalties that New Zealand gave away. It was for all kinds of things, just like sloppiness, which has plagued New Zealand a little bit this season. And I heard a stat, the commentator said that they're the most penalised rugby nation this year, in this calendar year, in the world. They've given away the most penalties, which I found unbelievable, considering New Zealand's game is based on execution and discipline. It always has been, you know what I mean? Not making errors or very few unforced errors. They gave away a lot of penalties, and Scotland, for the most part, capitalised on them. They did keep the scoreboard ticking over, but it proved in the end that they didn't get enough points on the board, because a try or so and a couple of kicks, and New Zealand were back in the lead. So really during that period of dominance, I think Scotland will rue the fact that they didn't actually put more points on the board than they did, and they paid for it in the end. Subs came on, the New Zealand subs came on, and they kind of fired up the New Zealand go forward. Frizzell is in the back row. I thought he did pretty well when he came on. Like a good ball carrying back rower, and I think every game he plays, he's kind of improving a little bit. He's still a bit rough around the edges, but I think he's a decent player for New Zealand for the future. Van der Merwe was having a stormer on the wing, the big Scottish South African, and he really looked like he wanted the ball in his hands and was taking on the. Basically, he would run towards whichever New Zealand forward that he saw first. He would just run towards him, but it was great to see him in full flight, and he played really well. One questionable error, they said he knocked the ball on when he was fielding a kick, but it seemed to hit his chest. I wasn't sure. What you find a lot with these autumn internationals, particularly in the second halves of games, maybe it's because of the pace of the game, they don't have the chance to play the replay, but a lot of the time you want to go back and have a look, but they're just not replaying the decisions, at least the coverage I'm watching. I don't know if you've had a different experience out there, but like that one I would love to have seen a couple of times, just to okay, it was a mistake, or it was the right call, or whatever. But it seems like as an audience, we're not getting the opportunity to really review the referee's decisions. I don't know whether that's a conscious choice or it's just coincidence. But I got Finn Russell diving on the ball. That happened in the second half. I was kind of proud of him, like a proud dad. I was like, well done, Finn, because I've been quite a vocal critic. I'm within my circles of Finn Russell, particularly when it comes to the Lions. But it was nice to see him do that and show a bit of guts finally. And then we fall into what seems to be a reoccurring pattern. Now, I've tried to stay out of the refereeing controversies with these reviews, because I feel like it's much more enjoyable and beneficial to talk about the rugby rather than the referee. And I think that's what all rugby fans want. If you don't have to talk about the referee at all in a game, there's a good referee. That's kind of the cliche, but it's so true. You know, and unfortunately we have to bring up a couple of decisions again, and it seemed to be like the timeline of it seemed to be almost a carbon copy of the France-South Africa match. So the referee did okay for the majority of the match, and then the last 10-15 minutes his decisions start to get a little bit more erratic. There was a yellow card for the Australian-born back rower. Is he a back rower or a centre? Anyway, you can check that. Fact check me on that one. And he wraps his arms around to make the tackle, knocks the ball on, and the referee, without any hesitation, he's quite sure of his decision, which I found a bit surprising. He pings him for a deliberate knock-on and yellow cards him. And I was right underneath Scotland's post, and from that, there was a massive shift then in the game, and New Zealand took control and never really looked back after that, and they looked pretty comfortable finishing out the game. But I think it was a harsh decision, you know what I mean? Particularly when the game is in the balance like that. If the referee must have the ability to give a player the benefit of the doubt, and I think in that circumstance, with the stakes are so high, he didn't even go for an interception. He was going in for a tackle, and if he did intentionally knock it on, it was great, like acting for him to pretend that he was going for a tackle and at the same time deliberately knock on the ball. So I think he gives the player too much credit there, like that. He's got the ability to try and hoodwink everybody, put the tackle in and deliberately knock on at the same time. So I thought that was a really tough decision. New Zealand then, again, the debutant, Delia, gets a try over in the corner. And then they call into question the grounding of the ball. And when you look at it, they actually showed a replay of it a couple of times, and you're like, not sure about that one. And what I found amazing was the touch judge was there, standing over him, and was waving his finger like that. Now, I don't know what that in refereeing profession, what that means, but it looks like to me he's saying, no, the try is no good. But the TMO then awards the try. And I was like, wow. I was kind of shocked by that, because again, if you're giving the benefit of the doubt to the player, okay, fine, but again, the referee seemed to be sure based on the TMO's recommendation, when the touch judge is standing right on the spot, perfect positioning, absolutely perfect, and he's waving his finger like, no, you didn't ground that, that's not a try. At least that's what I took it to mean. Again, it's that thing of, I don't want to harp on about the refereeing decisions, but it did have an impact in this game, as it did in Saturday's South Africa game. The referee is doing the job, obviously, but it's becoming a bit of a pattern, and I'm sure the World Rugby officials don't want the fans to keep getting as riled up as they are. How do you deal with it? I'm not sure, but it needs to be looked at least. In saying that, Scotland had their chances, and this is one of the things, if you've ever played rugby or any sport for that matter, you have to take the result of the game out of the hands of the referee. So if Scotland had got more points when they were dominating early in the second half, if they got a try or two, then it would have been out of the referee's reach and New Zealand's reach, and they would have come out winners. They didn't do that, and it's tough to stay on Scotland in such a tight test match against such quality opposition as New Zealand, but they did have the opportunities. It's unfortunate the decisions went against them at the end of the day, but I mean, that's kind of international rugby at the moment, and you've got to take the rough with the smooth, and I think Scotland will feel like they had a bit of the rough. So one that got away, New Zealand looked a little bit shaky at times, but again, they got quality in key positions. They're going to have a much harder test, I think, when they play. I think they're playing England. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. England are not having a good season so far either. So it's two heavyweights, two juggernauts who are not at the top of the game, going to be matching up against each other, and that's going to be an interesting game, I think. Yeah, going into the World Cup, I would have to say that South Africa, France, and Ireland are sitting above New Zealand at the moment, but New Zealand got time to turn that around. So congratulations to them. A good result up there in Murrayfield. Like I say, it's always a close-fought battle, and they came out with a win, which is all you can ask them, really. They look to up their performance levels again next Test match, and I wish both Scotland and New Zealand luck. Yeah, let's go. More games to come. All right, cheers.